If you delight in traveling and wine tasting, then we have a special opportunity for you. On February 26th from 8 to 10 at night, you can join in for a virtual wine tasting event with Rick Steves himself. That's right, we'll ship the wine to you, then Rick and a sommelier will host a Zoom event and entertain us with 2 hours of wine education in addition to a Q&A. Space is limited. Reserve your spot today at wfyi.org/live.
We're going to take a trip right now. Like we always do about this time.
This is a journey into sound.
Break it down.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. On this week's show, we'll look back at some of the notable Indiana musicians who passed away in 2025, including unsung funk musicians, a longtime bassist for John Mellencamp, a trailblazing West Lafayette band director, and an Indianapolis-based authority on global psychedelic music. We'll start with music from the legendary Fort Wayne, Indiana guitarist Gray Brabson, also known as G Money. Gary was born in Fort Wayne in 1961. He rose to prominence in the 1970s with the funk band Trust. Their 1978 single, Funk Power, has become a cult classic among record collectors, with original copies selling for $300. In recent years, Gary was known for his work in blues music, performing under the name G Money. Gray Brabson died on May 31st. He was 63 years old. Up next, we'll hear his 1978 single with Trust. This is Funk Power.
We wanna party. We wanna party. We wanna party. We wanna party.
That was Fort Wayne, Indiana's Trust with Explosion, featuring Gray Brabson on guitar. He died earlier this year at the age of 63. In May of 2025, the legendary Indianapolis funk keyboardist DeMorris Dee Gee Smith passed away. He was 71 years old. Dee Gee worked with Indianapolis bands like Epoxy, Class, Below Zero, and the Downstroke Band. And he performed and recorded with national acts too, including the Barkays, The Deal, Natalie Cole, Luther Vandross, Bootsy Collins, and Midnight Star. During the early 1980s, Dee Gee was a member of Red Hot, an Indianapolis band featuring former members of Manchild, the group that launched the career of Babyface. Let's hear a track off Red Hot's self-titled 1982 album. This is Ecstasy.
I just want to show you the way to ecstasy. Won't you please be mine, won't you be with me? Yeah, you gotta slide, you gotta glide, you gotta let your body flow.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. On this week's show, we're remembering some of the notable Indiana musicians who died in 2025. Up next, we'll hear music featuring the Indianapolis trumpet player, Ron Hedrick. He died in November at the age of 78. Ron is best known for his work with the Indianapolis band, Ebony Rhythm Funk Campaign, and he's featured on their 1973 debut album. Let's hear a sample from that record. This is Get On Off Me.
Okay, this is take two.
On January 16th of 2025, the Indiana bassist Toby Myers died at the age of 75. Toby is best known for his long tenure with John Mellencamp, appearing on many of the singer-songwriter's most iconic albums of the 1980s and 90s. Toby Myers was born in Indianapolis in 1949. He graduated from Pike High School and played with many local bands before joining Pure Funk in 1971. The band would later become known as Roadmaster, a dominating force in the Indiana rock music scene of the late 1970s. Roadmaster's self-titled debut album was issued in 1976 and featured production work from Todd Rundgren. I spoke with Todd Rundgren earlier this year, and we discussed his work with Roadmaster. In 1976, you produced 3 tracks for the debut album by Roadmaster, a legendary rock band here in the city. I know you've produced dozens of albums, but I'm curious if you have any memories of working with Roadmaster.
Roadmaster at the time included the mighty Adam Smasher, if you recall, who went on to be a DJ, I think, in Washington, D.C., and then other places after that. But he was quite a personality. I remember we were playing somewhere in the Indianapolis area, somewhere in Indiana, and went to see the band, and I thought that they were really good. They were rocking, and they had their own kind of slant on things. So arranged for them to come to Bearsville to do a little bit of recording. And at the time, I'm not even sure whether they had a label deal. I think they were doing an album on spec at that point, and then they found somebody afterwards to put the record out. It was pretty quick and easy. I mean, they knew they had played live a lot, so that's always an advantage. If the actors played the material for people, then it's easier to perform it in the studio. You're not so self-conscious. So we got a pretty good live sound out of them. Had a lot of fun with the guys, and I see some of the guys from the group every once in a while when I'm coming through the Midwest. So in my recollection it was a pleasant experience.
Good. Yeah, the album was released on a local label here called Village Records. In a 1976 interview with the Indianapolis News, Adam Smasher said, "You produced everything for free for the group." Was that typical of you during that time to help out up-and-coming groups that you took a liking to?
Yeah, if I thought they deserved some attention and they didn't have a record deal or anything like that. Since I had my own studio, it didn't really cost me anything to have them come in and record some songs. It might have, if we had done a whole album, it might have cost me more time. But as I say, they were pretty well rehearsed, so it didn't eat up a lot of time, and so it was no skin off of my nose.
Let's hear a sample of Toby Myers' work with Roadmaster. This is That Magic Feeling, produced by Todd Rundgren.
From all them lonely towns, I come to you to get me by. Right there to please me, acting like you glad to see me. Whenever I might find the time, let me tell you.
After leaving Roadmaster in the early 1980s, Toby joined the John Mellencamp Band in 1982, contributing his bass playing to multi-platinum albums like Scarecrow, and The Lonesome Jubilee, as well as touring globally with Mellencamp's group. During that time, Toby appeared on a unique 1994 album from Lisa Germano, the fiddle player in the John Mellencamp Band. The album was issued by 4AD, a pioneering British record label known for releasing albums from alternative rock, gothic rock, and dream pop artists like Bauhaus, Cocteau Twins, and the Pixies. We'll hear a track from that album now. This is Lisa Germano with Dresses, featuring Toby Myers on bass.
You make me wanna wear dresses. You make me wanna wear dresses. It's much, much safer in my dresses. You make me wanna wear dresses.
That was Lisa Germano with Dresses, featuring Toby Myers on bass. On this week's show, we're remembering some of the notable Indiana musicians who died in 2025. Gladys Stone Wright was a trailblazing band director, conductor, and composer based in West Lafayette, Indiana. She died on October 29th at the age of 100. Gladys helped to redefine the role of women band directors at a time when the profession was overwhelmingly male. During a 2017 interview at Purdue University, she discussed the challenges women band directors faced during the mid-20th century.
In that period of time, we were all men conducting, except there were a few isolated women. Then later, when I came along in 1948. I graduated in 1948, got my first job. And as far as getting through school, I didn't have any problem. But many of my friends and other colleagues, my women colleagues, said that when they went through it, they had a lot of difficulty. The band director said, "You shouldn't be doing this. You'll never get a job. Women don't do this." And they were strongly encouraged to go into vocal and general music. Many of them found it far more difficult than I did.
Gladys was born in Wasco, Oregon in 1925. After becoming one of the first women in the country to lead a high school band during the late 1940s, she'd go on to build nationally recognized programs in Indiana. Her most enduring achievement came in 1969 when she co-founded the Women Band Directors National Association and served as its first president, creating a national network of support and advocacy for women in the field. Let's hear an excerpt of Gladys conducting the United States Collegiate Wind Band during a European tour in the year 2000. Cultural Manifesto will return after this short break. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. On this week's show, we're remembering some of the notable Indiana musicians who died in 2025. Up next, we'll look back at the work of Stan Densky, an Indianapolis-based writer, scholar, and critic whose work focused on popular culture. Stan died on May 20th at his home in the Irvington neighborhood of Indianapolis. He was 72 years old. Stan Densky was born in Philadelphia in 1953, and he arrived in Indianapolis in 1990, taking a position with IUPUI as assistant professor of media studies and director of the telecommunication program. In addition to his academic work, Stan was a musician, music journalist, and an internationally known dealer and collector of psychedelic music. Stan's best-known musical project was Many Bright Things, an Indianapolis-based psychedelic band. Here's a sample of their 1996 debut, featuring Stan on vocals.
Down so low, I look up and I see my toes stepping on me. I feel a grab on my soul. Then I get lazy, lazy. I get that lazy river blue.
In 2005, Many Bright Things issued an album titled Many Bright Friends. The track I'm Not a Collector Potato featured a spoken word recitation from the punk rock legend Jello Biafra of the Dead Kennedys.
Psych. 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 Put on magic blindfold. Ride the magic bike. Look how much changed between 64 and 68. So many cats let out of the bag. Open a Pandora's box. Inside's another Pandora's box.
One of Stan Densky's many collaborators was Rick Wilkerson, former owner of Missing Link Records and the current director of the Indiana Music History Project. During the 1990s, Rick ran a record label with Stan Densky called Or Records. I recently spoke with Rick to learn more about his collaboration with Stan. I know you had a really significant involvement with Stan. Tell me a little bit about your personal and professional relationship with Stan.
Stan was a record collector that was a professor at IU, but really he was a record collector. that became his true love. And the thing about Stan, when I first met him, was he knew about private pressings and obscure stuff more than anybody I'd ever met. And like, for example, he turned me on to Ray Perley's first record, McKay. Even though I had a Ray Perley record in my collection, I didn't know about McKay. He turned me on to Anonymous. He knew stuff that nobody else in Indianapolis knew, even though he wasn't from here. And this was all pre-internet, so he learned what was collectible, what was rare, what was interesting. He found some stuff that nobody had found before, like Smokin' Willie. He found that for the first time. But he traded internationally with other wise people who did mail order catalogs and ended up with a lot of records from Indiana that he got from elsewhere, and it built my knowledge tremendously to the point where he and I and Jade Hubert started a record label called Or Records, with primarily to reissue private pressings, which tended to focus on Indianapolis and Indiana records.
You really helped to document some of the really important local psychedelic music. Tell me about some of the reissues you did with Stan, some of the bands you reissued.
Probably the most noteworthy one was that we did the first reissue of Anonymous, which was done by members of Sir Winston and the Commons, years later. And not only did we do the reissue of that, but we put out the first issue of the second band that Anonymous evolved into, called J. Ryder, where there were tapes but never was a record. So we got both of those out. We also did McKay. We did the Screaming Gypsy Bandits out of Bloomington. We did Smokin' Willie. There were a bunch.
Yeah, it's an incredible label, one of my favorite local labels. You mentioned Stan was a professor at IUPUI. He was also an internationally known record collector and really a scholar and historian on global psychedelic music. Tell me a little bit about his impact and legacy in the culture of record collecting, in the culture of psychedelic music, and this world of reissue labels, which you guys were really on the forefront of that when it came to psychedelic music.
We were kind of in the second wave. We learned a lot from Rockadelic out of Houston. That was kind of our muse. And he ended up writing liner notes for a lot of things. These Latin psychedelic compilations. I forget what the
Love,
series.
Peace, and Poetry.
Love, Peace, and Poetry, right. Thank you for reminding me. He wrote the liner notes for a lot of those. He befriended people like himself all over the world, and they became mutual sources. I have to tell you about Mooresville. Mm-hmm. You know about Mooresville.
I used to skip school and go out there.
Well, Stan basically skipped the whole summer.
Yeah.
And he pretty much lived down there, and that's how he built his record collection, by finding rare titles. And if you found one, you might find 50. So he'd buy them all for $1 a piece, and then he would have trading material to get what he wanted.
Yeah, it was a massive warehouse full of records that was owned by a music publisher based in Mooresville who just skipped town, disappeared, and the bank repossessed his warehouse full of records, right?
Yeah, and they didn't know what to do with it. So I think they brought in some private collectors to sell off some stuff, and then they basically opened the doors to anybody who would come in, and it was open like for months.
Yeah. When I met Stan, I was shocked at his knowledge of global music, right? I was very interested in South American psychedelic music, and he could speak at length on bands from Peru and Argentina. Tell me about his legacy as a scholar and figure in this global psychedelic music movement.
It's a shame he didn't write a book, mm-hmm. because he was a great writer, and his knowledge was, incomparable, really. And I don't know what he would have said, but I know that it would have cemented his legacy even more than it is. He was probably better known as a wheeler dealer record guy and a record label owner. The other thing that we did with Aura Records is we started a distribution and wholesale thing, as well as a retail. We were kind of vertical, and early on we were one of the best sources for psychedelic music online for retail customers.
Yeah, I used to buy from you when you were over at you had an odd little shop over near Keystone.
It was in the Malott Office Park. Yeah.
Well, thank you for taking a few minutes to talk about Stan Densky, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, and he's very much missed.
That was Rick Wilkerson of the Indiana Music History Project, sharing his thoughts on Stan Densky. Let's listen to a track from one of the legendary Indiana psychedelic records reissued by Orr. Off the 1976 album Inside the Shadow, this is Anonymous with Who's Been Foolin'. I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. That was the legendary Indianapolis psychedelic rock band Anonymous with Who's Been Foolin'. That record was reissued in 1997 by Orr Records, a label co-founded by by the Indianapolis-based psychedelic music scholar Stan Dinsky. Stan passed away earlier this year at the age of 72. Stan was also involved with a 1994 reissue of a sought-after psychedelic album from Beech Grove, Indiana's Zerfus. Here's an excerpt from the liner notes Stan wrote for the album's reissue. In many ways, Zerfus is the epitome of the U.S. private press psychedelic record. The album uses every device, every recording trick and technique, every late-night accident and mistake to finally realize their vision and deliver the closest thing Indiana would ever have to the archetype of studio psychedelic LPs, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. From their self-titled 1973 album, this is Zerfus with The Piper.
The autumn leaves that drift forgotten touch upon my swollen soul like fleeting shadows. They take my pride away. The piper may teach you well.
I'm Kyle Long, and you're listening to Cultural Manifesto. That was Beech Grove, Indiana's Zerfus with The Piper. A 1994 reissue of that album featured liner notes from Stan Dinsky, an Indianapolis psychedelic music scholar. Stan passed away earlier this year at the age of 72. One of Stan's most important contributions as an author and researcher of psychedelic music was his liner notes for Love, Peace, and Poetry, an influential 10-album series documenting the global psychedelic rock movement. The series featured volumes covering psychedelic bands from Brazil, Nigeria, Turkey, India, Mexico, Cambodia, and more. The first volume of Love, Peace, and Poetry was issued in 1997, a time when the psychedelic music scenes of Africa, Asia, and Latin America were largely undocumented in the United States. We'll end our tribute to Stan Dinsky with an excerpt from these albums. We'll begin with the band Embrujo, featured on Love, Peace, and Poetry's compilation of psychedelic rock from Chile. Stan framed the album's liner notes around the 1973 coup in Chile, led by the right-wing government of Augusto Pinochet. Stan wrote that all Chilean records pressed from 1973 on are by far the rarest, since the dictatorship banned most rock bands, and most musicians had to stop or leave the country. Stan wrote that the dangers of being a rock musician in Chile during this period were very real. This is Embrujo with Canto Sin Nombre.
Entonces mi cara miró al cielo y se fue corriendo por la senda que miraba al fin al horizonte.
That was Embrujo with Canto Sin Nombre from Love, Peace, and Poetry, a 10-album series documenting the global psychedelic rock movement. Love, Peace, and Poetry featured liner notes from the Indianapolis writer and scholar Stan Dinsky. We'll end this week's show with more music from the Love, Peace, and Poetry series. We'll listen to a track from the 1999 volume dedicated to bands from Asia. We'll hear Magic Colors from Teddy Robbins and the Playboys. In the album's liner notes, Stan wrote that anyone who lived in Hong Kong in the 1960s will instantly recognize the name Teddy Robin, a major film star in the enormous Hong Kong movie industry. The albums recorded by Teddy Robin and the Playboys in the late 1960s are now among the most valued psychedelic records in the world. Let's listen. That's all the time we have for this week. If you appreciate the arts and culture programming you hear on this station, please consider making a donation now at wfyi.org/give. And check out the Cultural Manifesto podcast at wfyi.org or wherever you listen to podcasts. Cultural Manifesto is hosted and produced by me, Kyle Long. Thank you for listening.
If you delight in traveling and wine tasting, then we have a special opportunity for you. On February 26th from 8 to 10 at night, you can join in for a virtual wine tasting event with Rick Steves himself. That's right, we'll ship the wine to you, then Rick and a sommelier will host a Zoom event and entertain us with 2 hours of wine education in addition to a Q&A. Space is limited. Reserve your spot today at wfyi.org/live.